Hey, welcome back into another segment of Mindset Monday with me, Matt. These are episodes where I share with you the wisdom that I've gained over the last 12 plus years and getting sober and staying that way and rebuilding my marriage and becoming a better father, better husband, better my professional work, just becoming a better man. And I also answer listener questions from time to time. And we got a really good one this last week inside of our free Facebook community, which, if you didn't know by now, exists and it's completely free. And it was built for spouses and partners as a clubhouse of sorts, a place for you to go and hang out, process issues, post anonymously, just read. You can vent, ask questions, get feedback, give feedback, whatever you need to do. It is there for you. Go to our website, twfo.com, to find out more about the free community. All you have to do is be a listener and answer our simple questions. We'll ask you how we introduce the show typically, which is our way of knowing that you listen to the show. And it's either welcome back, hey y'all, or Mindset Monday, something or other. We'll know. That's the most important question though. You can also find merch on that website, like I'm wearing right now. This beanie that I'm wearing, or Canadians, you guys call them toques or toques. I can't remember what it is, but they're available. And I hope you're staying warm. A winter storm has just ravaged large part of the country, and it is madness out there. Power's out all over the place. It's a mess. Our streets are just completely covered in like an inch plus of ice right now, and it's a mess. But hope you're staying warm. We've got space heaters all over the house, like you probably do too. We've got merch on the website to help you stay warm. We've got hoodies and we've got t-shirts. We've got these beanies, water bottles, all kinds of stuff. The hoodie I'm wearing, by the way, this is not for sale. This is faded camouflage, and I put a bright orange Scully logo. That's what we call our logo, Scully. I just thought it would be cool. I'm trying to live vicariously through my kids via fashion at times, and so they started wearing faded camo, which I thought was really weird at first because I think of camo, I just think of like hunting, like gear that you find in the bottom of your dad's drawer. But they're like repurposing it into streetwear, and the fashion I think is cool anyway. And so I wanted to buy these faded camo hoodies, and I knew that no one else would like them, so I just got one for me and one for Paige. So they're not for sale. I just thought it was cool. Just my personal opinion. Anyway, there's merch on the website. There's also, if you want to support the show and you think our merch is completely ugly, you can do that by going to our social media profile, clicking the link in our link tree, and you can buy us a cup of coffee. You can give as much or as little as you like, or nothing at all. And guess what? We will love you all the same. It makes no difference to us whatsoever. We will keep showing up here every week and giving you what we hope is valuable information to you as you're walking through whatever it is you're going through. If you're a guy listening to this, you're probably trying to rebuild your marriage or get sober or just become a better man, and we're here for you. If you're a spouse or partner and you're looking for insight as to maybe what the hell is going on in your partner's mind, you're hoping that I can provide some insight on that, we're here for you too. Whatever it is you're going through, what we are about here more than anything is about growth, and that's what we're trying to do here. Got an awesome question in our Facebook community, roundabout way of getting there. Someone asked their partner or spouse is in a treatment facility or maybe just out of a treatment facility. And they were told, you have to separate them from their addiction. These two things are completely separate. And that's how you can make peace with this. That's how you can make sense of all of this. And that's very, very common. I think that I've been told this more than 100 times or heard it said, whether that's in meetings, in my own treatment facility, wherever. It's a very, very common thing that spouses and partners and even the person who's struggling with addiction are told. You have to separate yourself from that addiction. That addiction is not you. And those things that you did in addiction were not you. That was a sick person doing those things. It was not you. It's not indicative of anything that you would do. So we have to let those things go, and we have to walk forward, and we are focused on walking forward. And this person couldn't get that off their mind. They could not get it out of their mind. That sounds wonderful. I mean, if I could just accept that, then yeah, I could see how we could really move forward. But something doesn't sit right. And so they asked for my feedback on this, my thoughts on this. And I was going to just reply, but it turned up into me writing a 12-page essay about it that I'm going to cover today, because I think there's so much to explore in this concept. And I think it encompasses a lot of the stuff that we talk about on the show. It encompasses so much about how I view recovery personally and what really worked for me and what I admire in the people that have walked through this before me. I think it's interesting, and I'm going to explore some of the pros and cons, where I think this comes from, why people say this. Is this even true? And if it's not, then is there a better model? I'm going to cover every bit of this today. I hope it's helpful and insightful for you, whether you're in addiction working through this or you're a partner or spouse. I think this is going to be helpful. I am not here to criticize anyone that has walked through this path, focusing on those exact words as their truth. That is not what I'm here to do at all. I'm just here to give my perspective on it, holding the compassionate viewpoint of that, and also looking at the truth that I believe is kind of overlooked, hidden over this. And so I'm going to be looking down a lot in this episode. So if you're watching this one, I apologize. I'm just going to reference the essay, maybe read chunks of it, and then talk about it, kind of go through this step by step. And let me think about how to do this. There's got to be a way that I can get this out to you guys. Maybe, okay, I will make a commitment to putting this on our website. If you go to the guide section, scroll to the bottom, and I'll just put it in there as a PDF. I'll probably link it in the community as well. Separate the person from the addiction. It is the simplest path forward. It's the softest landing. It's the story that hurts the least. But is it true? In active addiction, we all do things we're not proud of. It turns our stomachs to relive the worst moments in our minds or utter the words out loud that turn those memories into living stories for others. But pause on that phrase for a second. In addiction. Unless someone is a truly severe case, not every waking moment is spent under the influence. There are hours, sometimes days, there are gaps, there's space, there's still life happening in between uses. Yet years later, people will describe their behavior like this, quote unquote, in the insanity of my addiction, quote unquote, in the throes of my addiction, quote unquote, because of my addiction. Everything harmful gets placed inside of that container called addiction. All of it gets labeled as something other than the person themselves. But what about the good stuff? Was that not also done during addiction? Is there something uniquely broken about the addicted brain that only produces bad behavior? Or does it simply make bad behavior easier, more automatic, and more seductive? And if it is only influence, how do we explain the goodness that still shows up in people who are using, relapsing, or stuck in cycles? Taking a quick break from the essay for a moment, but that is something true that I think a lot of partners and spouses recognize. And that's why statements like this are such a mind F, because you will see your person showing up like wholly and fully and like being very considerate and loving and caring, whether that's as a partner or as a father, sharing duties in the household, working their ass off at their profession, whatever it might be. But then they turn around and just the insanity of who they can be in another moment, even when they're not necessarily using. It's such a mind F, but it's funny how we categorize everything bad as the addiction and everything good as them. We've always said, like, this is the same person. I think I'm just trying to make a case for that right here. Anyway, family members and addicted people alike are taught one simple idea. That was not you. That was your addiction. You are separate from it, and you have to separate him from his addiction. I personally never liked this shit. The first time I heard it, my left eyebrow raised in suspicion, because when I acknowledge my truth, my experience, the entire story collapses. Let's talk about the part that we pretend not to see. Did I lie? This is me. Did I lie in service of my addiction? Yes. My addiction, I believe wholly, influenced me lying more often than not. Did I know that I was needed somewhere more important than at my dealer's house? This was a big fight between Paige and I was always somewhere else. I was always running late. Because I was always having to drive miles and miles to meet a dealer to buy pills or whatever else it might be. Did I know that I was needed somewhere else more important than at my dealer's house? Yes. Yes, I did. Did I choose to do that instead of spending time with my family? Yes. Yes, I did. Did cravings influence that decision? Also, yes. When you are going through withdrawal or whenever you're craving something so badly, yes, they will influence that decision to overlook what you know you probably should be doing. But influence is not the same as absence of choice. Did I know right from wrong? It's a question. Yes, I did. Did I feel guilty? Yes, very guilty. Did I still do it? Yes, I did. We know that substances affect the prefrontal cortex. We know that impulse control weakens. We know decision-making becomes distorted. All of that is real. I'm never going to argue any of those things. Not only As science looked at this and people much smarter than me affirmed this, I experienced it. These things are true. So then another question, why did I feel guilty? Why did I know that I was fucking up? Something in me understood the line, and yet I crossed it anyway. So what do we do with that? What do we do with this conscious understanding that we're making a bad decision, but also acknowledging that bad decisions are easier to make when in addiction? And how does that fit inside of this model that family members and then even people who struggle with addiction are given? It's not you. This was not you. This was the addiction. If we can be good in addiction, if we can still make conscious choices in addiction, and then let's talk about this for a moment. What about people with process addictions like gambling, sex, compulsion, whatever those might be? No chemical is altering the brain. Do they get the same pass, or do we only absolve when there's a substance to point at? Here is the gray area that we refuse to sit in. This whole thing is more complex than saying, as a family member, they were fully aware and they are evil, or they were not in control and they are blameless. It is not that simple. You cannot bifurcate it that way. This is, I think, what we see a lot of the time, though, is people kind of fall on one side or the other, especially if you've been harmed, like if there's abuse or things like that. I think it's easier to buy this, they were fully aware and evil. If your loved one is sweet and they're just struggling, it's easier to buy they are not in control and they are blameless. Or maybe if you just badly want that relationship to work and you're kind of overlooking some things you probably shouldn't, it's easier to say they were not in control and blameless. Either way, it becomes easy to latch onto the story because we love binary. Like, we just love binary concepts. Yes or no, black or white. We love being able to check a box, one or the other. It's this or that. And then we decide quickly and we move on. But real life doesn't really work that way. We talk about it in depth on this show, about how life is in that gray space in between black and white. Addiction can impair reasoning without erasing reasoning. It can influence choices without removing them. It can make harmful behavior easier without making it inevitable. Both things can be true at the same time. We reject this because it asks too much of us. That's what I think. I think that people reject this outright because it simply asks too much of us. It requires so much nuance, and it requires emotional maturity. It requires sitting in discomfort instead of resolving it with a slogan given by a cheery addiction counselor that says you have to separate them from the addiction. Let's look at it. And I'm going to talk about the pros and cons, because what I don't want to do is just be some contrarian and say that this is ridiculous. We have to get rid of this. Not everything that we've always done is bad. I think that it's easy to look at that, and like, especially when you're I'm not a professional in this space. I should always start every episode by that. Like, I'm not a therapist. I don't hold advanced credentials that would qualify me to talk about this more than anyone else. I'm someone that is just deeply interested in these things and the brain science and how humans change and what growth looks like, and also relating that to a lot of my own experience. And I love asking questions and talking about this stuff. But I want to be clear that I'm not just trying to be a contrarian by saying I totally disagree with this because it fits my narrative as like a creator of the show, because it doesn't. I think that it's not black or white. It's really not. And so I want to acknowledge that if you are someone that is been able to digest this and move forward, that's excellent and that's great. And I love that for you. But if you're someone that just doesn't quite fit right, or you've always kind of wondered, but never really had the answer to look into it, that's what I'm going to try to do here. Let's look at some of the pros and cons of this, and also acknowledge that this framework, why we separate the person from the addiction, did not appear out of thin air. It survives because in many ways it works. And I want to acknowledge that. It solves real emotional problems, and it reduces suffering in the short term. It creates momentum where despair once lived, and it gives hope to the despondent. But it also extracts a cost, and a cost that is rarely ever named. So instead of pretending like this is good or bad, true or false, let's sit with what it actually does. And so this is what the story actually gives us, separating them from the addiction for both the loved one and the person who is struggling with the addiction. One, possibly the most important of them all, is that it reduces shame. And this is not a small thing. It may be the greatest pro of them all, honestly. Shame can be corrosive for some people. It paralyzes them. When someone believes that they are their worst behaviors and their worst actions, many won't even try to change because it looks insurmountable. I have effed this up so bad. the best thing to do is just quit at everything. So it wasn't you, quote unquote, gives people room to breathe again, frankly. It creates enough emotional safety for some to take their first honest step forward where they can forgive themselves and love themselves just a little bit, hug on themselves a little bit so they can give a damn about what the future would even look like. Because you can cause so much wreckage that it's like, well, dude, there's no coming back from this. Like it's totaled. So I think that it does serve that very important purpose. I think it allows people, kind of building on that, it allows people to forgive themselves. And it also helps other people forgive them. It creates a bridge. Let's just say that. It creates a bridge between what someone did and who they can become. For families that are drowning in pain, it offers them something that feels like oxygen, the ability to look ahead without being crushed or paralyzed by the past. Next, it provides an easy explanation for harmful behavior. And we like easy. Like in general, I've always said this. I think that we as a species are fairly lazy. I think that our science supports this too. Like our bodies try to preserve energy. Like we don't want to spend too much time thinking about things. That's why like simplicity wins out over the hard path every single time. It just provides an easy explanation that we don't have to think too hard about or too much about. But it's also not a complete one. But it is a functional one. I concede that 100%. It gives language to the confusion and the endless questions that partners and spouses have. It lets people say, this was not them at all. It was something that was wholly in control of them. And now I can make sense of why they would sleep with other people. Now I can make sense of why they would choose this substance seemingly over me and our children and our life that we've built, why they would do things that would land them into jail, why they would choose to abandon all of their responsibilities or go against what seems like their instinct for survival. It makes sense, right? Every single one of those, it offers an explanation for every single one of those things. Next up, it makes the harm feel less personal. And to be fair, I want to be fair, like it rarely is a personal attack. If someone is cheating on you, yeah, it is personal, but it's not always because you are not good enough. Let me be clear about that. They've got their own fucked up stuff that they're dealing with. And the degree to which they're effed up allows them to hurt you because you didn't deserve that. It's not like you deserve this. I want to be clear about that. For loved ones, this can be the difference between staying stuck in resentment or anger or rage and being able to see that person again. And it helps them believe that they were not targeted and that the pain wasn't about their worth. Although, again, in some ways, it kind of is because that's how you feel. And I think that as a whole, we've done a really poor job at acknowledging that with the pain of spouses and partners. I think that addiction treatment centers sell people short here every single day by acknowledging that how can that not feel personal, right? They were sleeping with my cousin or whatever it is. Like that is truly personal. It is. But I think that you can look at this and if you understand it in the way that they're selling it, selling is not the right word, but yeah, selling it, then yeah, it could feel less personal. The next one, reunification becomes more likely. I think that's fair. Families are more willing to try again if the harm is framed as external to that person. And this idea keeps doors open that might otherwise be closed forever. Next up, another big one, it makes recovery feel possible. Simple narratives like this, I think that they invite participation. When change feels less insurmountable, when it feels less impossible, people are more willing to attempt it. It's like thinking like, oh shit, like it's not that bad after all. Okay, maybe I'll give this thing a shot. But if you told them day one up front how nuanced and crazy and complicated this was, maybe less people would be willing to give it a shot. And I acknowledge that's true. I think it also humanizes people in the eyes of society. Redemption becomes socially acceptable when this is the narrative. I think it's more socially acceptable anyway. I think as a whole, we're getting better as a society about understanding nuance, but maybe that's just with smart people. There's still a lot of dumb people out there running around. So this could be a problem. People don't get treated like villains forever because we can understand addiction does affect people's decision-making. And if it's not them, then we have to give that person underneath it a break. And they're seen as someone who was under a spell of sorts. I'll get into that a bit more later. And then who woke up and now they deserve a second shot. Next up, it can be a good starting point. Caveat with that, it is not the ending. I'm firm on that part. I'm big on that last piece because for some, this story is just the doorway. It's how they begin to enter the realm of recovery and the journey forward, the journey that will ultimately rebuild everything and save their lives. And it softens the nervous system enough to begin the deeper work. Now, years later, after consistent behavioral change, and after your loved ones have actually seen you work through this, acknowledge their pain, own it, acknowledge it, walk forward, and change, loved ones are then probably, I would guess, more likely to forgive things that they never could have forgiven on day one. All of this matters, and none of this stuff is fake. All of these points, these are real benefits, right? But what does this story take from us? Why then? Let me get some more water. Hang on. I'm parched. Maybe because it's so dry because of the coldness. I don't know, man. I'm not used to this stuff. Usually we're like drowning in humidity down here. This is nuts. What does the story cost us? Before we get into that, I want to talk about trust. Trust is something that we just discussed. You know, once you rebuild trust, it becomes a lot easier, I think, for loved ones to forgive you for past transgressions. Maybe there's some deal breakers, like, again, affairs or things like that. But as you move forward and you discover more about yourself, and you've shown and you've got proof that you are someone that can be trusted, and you are someone that people can admire and value. Once you've reestablished that stuff, it becomes a lot easier to talk about some of those past transgressions. But for a lot of people on day one, they have zero trust. And I want to be clear, that is earned distrust. You cannot be upset with people for not trusting you. You have to earn trust. It is lost in buckets. It is built in droplets. It is much easier to lose trust than it is to gain trust. Now, what can you do? Is there anything you can actually do to speed this process up? As it turns out, yeah, I believe you can. Our sponsor is SoberLink. SoberLink's been a sponsor of the show for a while, and the reason they're a sponsor of our show, even though we don't necessarily this isn't a, maybe it is. Is this an addiction advocacy program? Sort of, yeah. I think this is an educational program. If anything, we discuss things like this, but it's weird because we are trying our best to protect spouses and partners from further harm, and the last thing we would want to do is introduce a tool that just kind of kicks the can down the road. But I don't think that's what SoberLink does at all. And I mean that with all my heart, because what it actually does is provide accountability to the person who is trying to get sober. Like, if you're as serious as you say you are, you volunteer to get this thing. You set it up, and you set up the network of people that are going to get notified every time you use the device. That way that they know that you're taking the lead in repair, which I insist on. You take the lead. So you use the device, they get notified. It's got facial recognition technology, so you can trust the person using it. It's the person that's supposed to be using it. It is tamper-proof. And it is a great way to start to rebuild that accountability, right? You don't have to be babysat because they know you're doing the deal without them even asking. And that's awesome. It also gives them visibility and transparency, something they've always wanted. They don't have to feel crazy anymore. That's why we love it so much. Spouses and partners don't have to run around thinking, oh my God, am I codependent? Is something wrong with me because I'm just scared? I don't want them coming home drunk and doing something they shouldn't or getting a DWI. Listen, it takes that off their plate. They no longer have to worry about this. What better gift could you give them? Other than change behavior, of course, but what better gift could you give them? That's why we believe in SoberLink. That's why they're sponsored of the show. And it's never been easier to get in one of these devices. For as little as $19 a month, you can start right now. Go to soberlink.com/wheels. Sign up for a 1-year plan. And when you use our link, they're going to send you $100 too. You can use that toward the purchase price of the monthly program to offset some of it. You can use it toward Tufo merch. You can use it toward your bills, Amazon, the electric bill or the gas bill you are no doubt going to have after this cold snap. Whatever the heck you want to use it for, they will help you out. Go to soberlink.com/wheels. Back to what this story cost us. We've talked about the pros, and I think I was really fair in all those pros. I think this is what everyone has probably looked at. Maybe there's some I didn't catch, but for the most part, I think those are them, right? We can all see that that's what's beneficial about this. But what does it cost? Why do some people have a hard time accepting that? Why did I have a hard time accepting that? Why did my wife have trouble accepting it? Or the person that asked me this question to begin with? Here's why I think it's so difficult, because there is a gray area and there is an underbelly to, they're like Thomas Sowell, like there are no such things as decisions. There are only trade-offs. Like, what's the trade-off to choosing that to be the truth? This is the trade-off. It turns addiction into a mysterious force instead of a human pattern. When we make addiction feel mystical or paranormal, like something that no one can understand, it creates a kind of information power, I think. those inside of it become quote unquote experts, and those harmed are left doubting their own reality. It's a sort of sneaky arbitrage, I think, with information, truth, and emotions. What I mean by this is that when you can't clearly explain when it was you, when it was the addiction, how much of this was the addiction, how much of this was me, you kind of get to decide as the person who had the addiction. And so you really get to write the narrative. Like, you get to rewrite history to your own benefit and possibly to the detriment of other people. I think it gives the person who had the addiction the power, as I put here, sort of an information power. And you can arbitrage that at your will. You can leave out certain parts. You can blame the addiction for this and not that. And for your loved one, it makes them feel like, I really don't understand this, man. Maybe it's something I'll never be able to understand. And it leaves them just with a lot of questions. I think it leaves people dumbfounded and kind of befuddled. Like, how the hell does any of this make sense? And I think for a lot of them, they're like, okay, but they never really feel secure in that answer. I think that's how a lot of people feel. Hope that makes sense. Next up, I think it offers an easy psychological escape. If harm can always be externalized, like I just mentioned, there's little incentive to examine the parts of the self that made those choices possible. Growth may stall where honesty should begin. Many people sober up and never change because of this statement and ones like it. If we're saying that it's just the addiction, you're also kind of in a roundabout way of saying it's not my abusive patterns that developed as a result of my childhood or as a result of being abusive, right? The way that I look at power dynamics in a relationship, my misogynistic views, my red-pilled views, whatever it might be that makes you abusive gets dismissed and thrown out. It's just the addiction, right? And so this is where a lot of people completely fuck up recovery, is they assume that without the addiction that they are amazing people. But recovery from addiction is really, and staying recovered and growing over time is really about uncovering all those things that are left over, because addiction was just a symptom. It's just a symptom of all this stuff, the inner turmoil. We acknowledge that. And so if we're telling them it's just the addiction and they're fine, we're kind of dismissing the fact that they have a shitload of work to do internally. And so how many people are taking the statement and then doing nothing when they get out of treatment and not taking any feedback whatsoever when those behaviors are acknowledged in the absence of a substance? You're not allowed to bring up the past. You can't talk to me that way. When are you going to let this go? I'm sure a lot of you have heard this and it's maddening. This is, I think, a downside to the statement. Next up, it dulls empathy for the people that were hurt. The focus shifts quietly, I think, to the recovery journey and not the wreckage left behind. Pain and shame become something to move past without too much thought, not something that we should be metabolizing. Whenever people get sober, it's, again, like, I think, yeah, like we could look at triage, right? And an ER. What are the most immediate needs? Okay, we do have to stabilize this person. But I think that the inertia kind of starts in that direction and it never drifts back to the harm for a lot of people. They don't really acknowledge this. And I have been ripped a new one by more 12-steppers than I can possibly count, screaming up and down that they did this. Okay, you're not everybody, dude, and you're sure as hell not me, and you don't get the emails that I get, and you don't get the messages that I see. You don't get any of this shit. You know what your little bubble is and what you did. I ain't talking about you if you did this stuff. I did it too, but I'm still acknowledging that many effing don't. So stop, okay? Very few people actually do the work necessary to acknowledge the damage that was done and what this has done to their loved ones. That is a fact, and I will die on that hill. So quit. I think that this message is partly responsible for it. That's my point. Next up, it can trap partners in relationships under false pretenses. This is a big one. When someone believes the behavior was truly not them, quote unquote them, your loved one who struggled with the addiction, when you believe that it was not them, that wasn't them, they may stay in situations that are unsafe, hoping for a version of that person that does not yet exist or may never exist. I think in some ways, spouses and partners and children that are innocent become collateral damage to people who are the abusive types for this. I also think it's really easy to dismiss their pain. And it kind of puts them in a situation where we're almost forcing their hand to make decisions under what I said, false pretenses sometimes, that no, when I was cheating on you, like, listen, like, I know that a lot of people struggle with meth and heroin. I'm not meth and cocaine, heroin, meth and cocaine. A lot of those uppers, a lot of those people also have issues with sexual compulsion, right? And so they'll be cheating and do all kinds of things. And we will tell family members straight up that was just because of that. It's not just because of that, because there are people who use those substances and don't also do those things. There is something else going on in that person. That's just true. Okay. I'm not saying, listen, maybe it's not fair for me to say because I've never been one of those people, but common sense is what I will always use on the show. Common sense tells me I've talked to a lot of them and not everyone did it. And I talked to the ones that did, and it seems like there's some other shit going on there. Okay. They're making those bad decisions. Were they helped by those drugs? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But what if their loved ones knew that they also had some issues that were going on? Would that change their decision about moving forward? Maybe it would, and maybe it wouldn't. But I think that we're not really giving them the full breadth of the information to make their decision. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying also for a lot of the really abusive types, and this is, yeah, there's some out there that are like this. We're telling women who are being physically or emotionally abused, like physically abused, like, guys, these dudes are out there and they've been arrested for domestic violence more than a few times. And their spouse, that woman, and those children are being told it's not them. When we all know that that's not fucking true. Not all the way, is it? Is this right? No, it's not right. We have to acknowledge this. We've got to acknowledge this. When we talk about the truth, I think we have to acknowledge that abuse and addiction are separate, that these things are not. Addiction is not wholly responsible for abuse. Abuse lives underneath some other things, other problems. This is just way too simple for abusive dynamics, for what it really changed, what it really takes to change someone who is abusive. Dark personality types, right? I think that this is, you can really trap people in situations that are completely unsafe for them. That is a serious concern I have. It's also oversimplifies what real change requires. Sobriety becomes the finish line, I think, for a lot of people. But really, it's just a starting point. I've said it before, it's just a ticket to entry to the growth show. That's all it is. Sobriety is just the ticket to entry to the big show of behavioral change. But it doesn't appear that way when we oversimplify it. The deeper psychological or relational or moral work gets bypassed when we oversimplify change. Just stop the substance. It's the addiction, right? The addiction to the substance is your problem. No, it is a symptom of your problem. And I think that a lot of people read it this way. I know a lot of people read it this way because they tell me that. All right, I'm not making it up. All right, next. It removes agency while pretending recovery is not a choice. This is the one that explodes my brain. This is the contradiction at the center that really gets to me. If addiction erases choice, if you have no choice, if addiction is not a choice, then recovery cannot be chosen either. And yet people choose recovery every single day. So addiction is a process bookended by choices. In the beginning, we pick up, that's a choice those first few times. It's a choice. Then something happens. Our minds change. Our reward center's rewired, and it does not feel like a choice. I acknowledge that. I was stuck in it too. But then how does it end? Voila, a choice. It's a process bookended by choices. We have to acknowledge that there is some component of choice in addiction. When we say that it was not them, okay, well then how did they make all these decisions to get better? You know, like while they were still using, like they were making decisions toward getting better. And so I just think that, I think it really, in some ways, I think it diminishes people's agency and makes them feel like they have a whole lot less power than they do. I'll just leave it at that. Next up, it silences unresolved pain. Loved ones feel something is unfinished, but they are told it should not be discussed. They have no way to convey the real emotional pain they're experiencing because treatment centers and counselors alike do not hold space for those feelings. You can't bring up the past is often used by people that have wholly accepted that they are separate from their addiction. The past becomes off limits and the pain with it. And the chance of truly connecting intimately dies. If you're saying that wasn't you, then you're also saying, I can't talk about it. That wasn't me, honey. I was possessed. That was the demon or whatever however you've made sense of this. But they've got real pain. And like, if you're going to be together, they've got to be able to talk to you about this. They can't just talk to the therapist about it. Like, you've got to acknowledge this stuff. You have to validate it at the very least. And if you can't hold space for that, we've identified the real problem there. And it wasn't the addiction after all. It's your inability to sit with someone through discomfort because you don't know how to metabolize shame. that's too much to fit on the back of a token, right? You are not your addiction is much easier. So yeah, I think that this can seriously undermine the recovery and the what it really takes to build relationships. Like, I don't know everything about the brain science of addiction, and we're uncovering more and more every day, but I know how relationships work. I know what makes a good one. And what doesn't make a good one is denying someone's reality, or disregarding it, or saying we don't talk about it, or pissing on their leg and telling them that it's raining. Partners and spouses know, they know, man. And what threat is it to you to just talk to them about it, other than it brings you shame, and that's more important than their feelings of being dismissed or hurt or invalidated or abused or whatever it might be? That's what we're saying here, I think, is that the addicted person's feelings of shame are more important, are greater than everyone else's potential feelings about what transpired. And that is not right. Next up, it can keep people in harm's way, kind of building on a previous one. That's another way of saying it. But again, especially for vulnerable women and children. And there are men that live in these situations too. I want to acknowledge that. There are some men out there that have reached out that are in some really, really tough relationships with women that are addicted to something. But when there is abuse that is being reframed as illness, safety gets sacrificed for the idea of redemption. That's not cool. Every day that someone is stuck in those situations, they are one day further away from safety. They are one day closer to their possible demise. This is not okay. Again, I think that we are completely oversimplifying and overlooking the fact that abuse hurts people. And if we're going to say that that's not real, that's just the addiction, then it's going to keep them like stuck in that hopium that things will get better the moment that person gets sober. And yeah, some people can get better, but these things still have to be addressed. And how is that helping someone when they're having hands thrown at them, right? It's not. So I want to acknowledge the people that aren't able to defend themselves. I will defend you. I'm your voice. This is a massive downside to this. So I think I've talked about some awesome pros. I think I've talked about some really concerning cons. So what do we do? Which one of these wins? And honestly, I don't know. I don't know that there is a right answer, because I don't believe in black and white usually. I just don't. Honestly, I think that it's probably going to be individual for each person and their journey and their relationship, their ability to accept truths about themselves, their emotional capacity for metabolizing shame, between their therapists and professionals that they have entrusted with their care, a million other things. But also, I think that it's really not for me to decide that kind of policy. It's just not. I think it's interesting to talk about, but I am not here to decide policy or tell anyone what to do with their lives. I'm here to have interesting discussions and to massage ideas and concepts, and so we can get better discussions going. So someone smarter than me can come up with an answer for that question. But I do have some thoughts about this. Here's what I do know. To me, the truth matters. Matters a lot. Matters more than anything. There has to be a way to honor the compassion of the model that says it wasn't them, it was their addiction, without lying to ourselves or the people that were hurt, right? Like, there has to be a way to kind of mold the two, to hold agency and empathy at the same time. Because when we pretend that the addicted person is the most important person in the room, I think that we lose something really sacred. I think that too many people are paying that price in silence right now. So let's acknowledge a few things as well, in addition to those other points. Regardless if you agree or disagree with my take on any of this stuff, I think that these are common sense. One, there is still a lot of science that we do not fully understand. We still cannot map exactly how addiction affects each individual brain. Yes, it changes learning and reward systems. We know that. But people also habituate. They make small, harmful choices repeatedly without consequence. And over time, the brain learns. This is fine. That's what the brain's thinking. This is fine because I haven't had a consequence yet. It's not because it is fine. It's because you have not been punished yet. And there are no consequences. And so we internally habituate our lives in poor behavior. So is the addiction driving the behavior? Or is it a learned pattern reinforced by rationalization and the lack of consequence? We don't know, but we pretend we do. We don't know. That's the answer. We don't know. We choose the answer that fits our narrative. If you think that addicted people are horrible humans, you will choose that they had a choice. If you think that they deserve compassion, you will say the other, but it's something between the two. It really is. It is something between the two. Mark Lewis wrote a book called Biology of Desire. It's a really interesting look at the neuroscience of addiction. He says it's not a disease at all. It's not. He says it's just deep learning. It's a brain doing what the brain is trained to do based on the reward stimulus. That's just what the brain does. And neuroplasticity can fix this. And it's not a chronic disease, disease by categorization, but not an actualization. And so I tend to personally think that model felt a little more like my experience. It becomes so easy to lie to yourself and to other people when you haven't had a real consequence for it. Like, I think that the reward overrides the consequence, and that's just your brain's way of habituating and making sense of it. And so, yeah, I think there's still a lot of science that we don't quite understand. And I'm tired of people saying that they know. Well, you don't know. You don't. You say you do, but you don't. I don't know. You don't know. It's something between the two. We're still learning. That's what's cool about science, right? It's that you never really know. This is what we know right now. We could learn something new tomorrow. And I love that. Reserve the right to change your mind. Anyway, this is really interesting to me and one to me. I think that the fundamental attribution error is at play here. And if you don't know what the fundamental attribution error is, it's the idea that we judge ourselves by our circumstances and we judge other people by their character. Like, if you cut to the front of the line, you're an asshole. But if I cut to the front of the line, I had a good reason. Like, whenever you cut in traffic, well, I was running late, but when someone else does it, that guy's a piece of shit. What a scumbag. Probably just doesn't care about people, right? It's this fundamental attribution error. But I think addiction magnifies this bias. And when we're told it wasn't you, it was your addiction, it becomes so effortless to excuse the harm. We move from I hurt someone to something happened to me. And I think that can be really dangerous. We have to acknowledge that the fundamental attribution error is at play here. And we're kind of supercharging people's already inherent bias that we are innocent and other people screw up. It's so much easier to forgive, to write off the bad things that we are doing. And I think this just plays further into that and supercharges it in a way. And I wonder, is this a bad thing? Probably is. There's probably something to that. Next, shame relief and the hunger for reunification. We want families back together. We want closure. We want relief. So we simplify the story to reduce pain in favor of the truth. We placate the emotional need to believe something less painful than this person harmed me and they knew it. Is that wrong? Rhetorical question. I don't, maybe not, maybe, I don't know, but I know it is incomplete. It is incomplete. Something else here, what I call the inside secret. I don't know, maybe I'm selling out just myself here, but I think I can't be the only person that's had this thought. Sometimes it feels like an unspoken agreement in recovery circles, like sitting around a 12-step meeting, and someone's talking like this, right? That wasn't me. That was my addiction, blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking around the room and I'm like, we've all done terrible things. I know what I did. I knew it was wrong. But the only way to live with ourselves is to pretend that we had no choice. And I wonder how many people feel that same way that I do. And maybe early on, there was this inkling that oh man, I wasn't responsible. Okay, I can forgive myself. I didn't have a choice. But then I was like, I did. And saying that feels disingenuous. And so I think what people do to protect themselves is we start to externalize. It was the disease. It was the addiction. It was the demon, whatever it might be. We mythologize and we turn addiction into a disease, a demon, a possession by a nefarious force from below. Here's the truth. My greatest growth came from doing the opposite of that. It was never saying it was the addiction. It was saying this was in me. This was all in me. Every bit of it. Now, am I everyone? No, I'm not. I'm not everyone. And I don't think I'm special either. But I also don't think that I'm vastly different from people. I think I'm average. I'm an average dude. And so I know there are other people that feel this way. I just wonder how many could benefit from not buying into this idea and really beginning to truly work on themselves and how much better it would serve them, their community, their families, their children, their spouses, everyone that they come in contact with. I think that we would have greater and more impactful and powerful recovery stories if we started to talk about the real shit underneath it. Some do. There's people out there that do this, but I think that there are many more that I hear that make addiction sound like some mysterious force. And man, I don't know. It feels like it lacks accountability to me. I accepted the monster that I was, and knowingly in a lot of ways. I acknowledged the selfishness that was underneath it. I acknowledged the manipulation and the darkness. I And instead of running from it, I repaired it. I stared it straight in the face. I accepted and I forgave myself in spite of it. I changed because I told the truth, not because I hid behind a story. That's my reality. It's as real as I am here in front of you, or you're hearing my voice. That is my truth. I changed because I faced all this crap, not because I pretended that it didn't happen or that it wasn't me. Like, my greatest growth came from looking the shit in the face and saying every bit of that was me. And I have to wonder, are there people who are getting half of what I was able to get because they're not really looking at this the right way? Could be. And another thing, I think we vastly underestimate the intelligence of spouses here. They know, man. They're not stupid. They have these thoughts too. And like, Paige knew. Of course she knew. She's not dumb. She felt like she was being treated like she was an idiot, though, whenever she would hear stuff like this in that treatment center, like in our family education program. But I respected her enough not to gaslight her, not to lie to her, not to deceive her, even though that the industry would have supported me fully in doing it, even though other people in recovery would have supported me. Other people would have vouched for me, but just didn't feel right, did it? When I got sober, like, my big thing was I'm never going to lie again. I'm not lying anymore. I'm not doing it. I won't do it. And I haven't. And that's not always convenient, but I can't tell another lie. I just can't do it, man. I won't lie to anybody else ever again. Can't, especially myself. All right. So what was my truth? I accepted everything I did as a function of me, of moi. It wasn't my addiction. I acknowledged the substances did make the bad decisions easier to live with, but they did not make them right, and they did not make me innocent. I knew, I chose, I failed, I fucked up. Here's how I approached it. I wrote this. This is like what I had essentially said to Paige, not in one conversation, but this is the thesis of how I approach repair when it comes to relationships. If you are new at this and you are someone who is working through early recovery, this is essentially what I said, what I did. Let me know if you agree. I acted out of character only in part because I was addicted. And I need you to know that. I knew that I wasn't living right. And I feel horrible about it every single day. It makes making bad decisions easier, but I always knew that they were bad. I disregarded my responsibility to you, our family, and myself. And I will spend every waking moment for the rest of my life in honor of you and repairing the broken parts of myself that made all of this possible. I'm committed to abstinence because substances did play a role, but more so, I'm committed to behavioral change and growth. I want the next chapter of our lives to look like the one that I always promised you. And I know that's an insane ask, but if you give me a chance, I won't let you down. If you don't, I respect that too. It will not affect the vigor and tenacity at which I move forward with the work before me. In forgiving me, you will also be forgiving the things that I knowingly did. Those bad decisions were me, and I only have myself to blame. I regret every bit of it, and I'm a dumbass. You will be burdened with the pain of that truth for the rest of your life, and I will sit with you through every bit of it and be by your side to process it at the level that you will allow me to physically, but I will always be there in spirit and in thought. If we're going to move forward, it will be while knowing all of these things and deciding to walk forward anyway, not because you accepted something that I know isn't true. That's how I approached it, guys, and I think that's right. I also acknowledge this is probably really risky for some people, especially serial cheaters, because it could spell the end of your family unit. But be honest with yourself. How much of that was driven by some other shit, right? As real as it may not have felt for you, it was so real for your loved one, and it's time that we start acknowledging that. I think it's right nonetheless. I don't like how we treat family members as stupid. Like, why don't we sit with them through their pain and acknowledge it the same way that we do the person who struggles with the addiction? Like, why the insistence on pretending that none of this was real? I don't know, man. I don't know, but I know it's not right. I also think this is the part where recovery can't be contingent at all. That is, it can't be reliant on someone agreeing to get back with you or letting you see your kids right now, getting your job back. Like, you have to do this for you. I didn't care what Paige ultimately said. I mean, I did, but it wasn't going to affect what I did. It wasn't going to affect it. I was going to fix me. And to be real, if I'm just being honest right now, I was going to become so good at this and so amazing at it that she would have been a fool not to give me another chance. Like, if she said no thanks, I was going to live in a way that she probably would have regretted that. And maybe that's messed up for me to say. I don't know, but that's just how committed I was. Like I was so effing committed that like there's no way that she will see what I become and say like, you know what? No. I do acknowledge that there are situations where there's nothing you can do. You've caused too much pain, and that's just a reality. You're just going to have to accept that. But it should not change the tenacity as you work forward and change and grow. Yeah. So like, how do we model this? Like, how do we scale this? How do we make this part like generally accepted part of recovery in general? I don't exactly know, but I don't think it would be that hard. I think it's mostly common sense. I really do. I'll describe it like this: get fucking better, do fucking better, acknowledge, repair, grow, repair some more, own it, move forward. It's like that's the model. I disregarded my responsibility to my wife, my family, my profession, myself, my community, and I regret every bit of it, but I own that. And I will spend every moment of my life repairing what I broke and becoming someone worthy of the trust that I destroyed. And it's not easy, but it is simple. And I think we need to stop pretending like it's not. It is kind of simple. It's just, I don't think that we quite know how to deal with each individual person's level of shame and their capacity to metabolize this stuff. But that is the job of the mental health industry. That's like what you guys are supposed to be doing. Treatment centers and LCDCs and people that work in these. And I know there's some really fine people in these industries that do this work. I just don't think it's happening at scale. I really don't. I think that it came up the other day whenever this person asked me the question. And so it's not easy, but it is simple. It's just uncomfortable. And maybe that's the cost of just telling the truth, that it's uncomfortable. A lot of people in addiction behave selfishly and they lack empathy. And that is not a moral judgment. That is an observation. It's also not rare. It's pretty common. And pretending otherwise does not help anybody, y'all. I do not have a lot of patience for the insistence of what I would call toxic empathy, especially from people that have never lived in it or lived with it. It's a strange form of luxury belief to me that sounds really great out loud, but disproportionately affects the people that have to deal with these situations on a daily basis. What I mean by that is I see people who have things like I've just had to say out loud. They will say it and they will get attacked by people that say that lacks compassion, that lacks empathy. These are humans. We need to acknowledge that. Okay, is everyone in this situation not a human? Do they all not deserve compassion? Because what you're saying in a roundabout way is that the most important person in the room is the person with the addiction, and the pain they cause doesn't matter. And that's not true either. Yes, that person with the addiction deserves compassion. Yes, they deserve empathy, but there is such a thing as toxic empathy. And that's when we overlook common sense in favor of a narrative that makes you feel good for saying it. It gives you some kind of moral status that puts you above other people and makes you feel like you're above them, but it's a luxury belief. It's a luxury belief. It is to the detriment of the people who were disproportionately affected by that, which are the people who were living with them, right? It sounds really good to tell a spouse or a partner who's in the comment section saying, my addicted person hurt me, that they just have a disease, give them a break. Yeah, you look good. Good. Here's your social XP you've earned, your social credit points. But that person is going to carry that belief now, and they're going to put themselves in harm's way because of that. It affects the people who are having to deal with this. So if you haven't been there, if you've only heard about it, and you just want to carry this belief because it fits with whatever, I don't know, maybe even political status you have, shut the fuck up. Think about everyone involved. We have to start thinking about everyone involved. Empathy, compassion are not zero sum. There's a limitless supply of this stuff, and we have to start giving it to everyone involved. I'm not saying we need to take it from anyone, but I'm saying we do need to add some to the other people who are involved here. So, bit of a tangent there. Sorry. I just seen a lot of this lately. But I think that the real antidote to this is humility, and it's not performative shame, and it's not self-flagellation either. It's in humility that comes from finally seeing the impact of your life's choices on other people and letting that reality change you. Sometimes that hurts. Sometimes it has to. Growth without discomfort is just a nicer story about staying the same, because growth is always uncomfortable, and we have to acknowledge that. I know that doesn't fit the overly compassionate model, but that's just true. Ask anyone that has grown, anybody, and they will tell you it should hurt. I had to look at some hard truths. Every single person, you've done it, listener, viewer, you know what I'm talking about, right? And so it's odd to me that we act like you can achieve this amazing level of growth at zero cost. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. And so when we spin this narrative for families or loved ones, we are quietly making the addicted person the most important person in the room. Their pain, their healing, their redemption becomes the center of gravity. And I just don't understand how that happened. I've got theories, but not talking about them here. Because there is a non-insignificant number of families who would actually heal if the addicted person were not part of their day-to-day lives. There are people who would be safer, children who would have more stability, partners who could finally breathe. It hurts me just as much as you to hear that and to say that. I believe in empathy and I believe in compassion. I believe in forgiveness and grace. But I also believe that there is a point where empathy stops being loving and starts being dangerous when it asks people with a real chance at wholeness to keep sacrificing themselves for someone who may never change. I'm talking about the children that are affected. I'm talking about the spouses and partners that are affected, the systems that are affected, the people that are affected by this thing. That trade-off deserves to be named. And I think that's a bit of what's going on here. I think that's just a reality, and it's not one that like I started with. I think this just came as a result of being in the space for long enough to see the truth that there are people who have no intention of ever being different, and they have no problem letting their families wear the brunt of that. Do I believe in families? Damn right I do. I do. I believe in family systems, but I also believe that there are systems that are better as not a nuclear family, where they have a safe parent and a stable home, a stable environment. And that's better than a family with a toxic person. I believe that. I do. I don't have the data to prove it, but I think it's better. I do. It's a rough thing, man. It is. It's a hard thing to say, but I think it's the truth. And it's not black or white. It doesn't fit in anyone's narratives really, but it is just the truth. And you don't believe me, talk to survivors of people, or talk to people, survivors of these situations who've come out the other side and found that they can finally breathe and sleep at night, and they have peace in their homes and their environment, and their children are getting better, and the behavioral problems are stopping, and the cutting is stopping, and all the things that they struggle with is slowing down because they are no longer exposed to chaos every single day. And we keep feeding families this narrative that just stick it out. It's not them, it's their addiction. You have to separate it, detach with love and all this stuff. Like, those are useful ways to survive, but that's not a long-term solution for safety for anybody. And I think that's where we go wrong a little bit. I think there is a way to give a common sense message about this stuff. I've laid it out here. I'll try to make this, again, I will try to remember to make this available to you guys if you're interested in reading it. And if you're watching this, I apologize. I'm just staring down because I cannot remember a 12-page essay. My memory is not that great, not even close. But it's been fun hanging out. This was a fun one to talk about. I hope one day to achieve my lifelong goal of brevity, being able to speak concisely with very few words and get my point across, but I'm an over-explainer, and that's why it takes me an hour to answer a question that probably shouldn't take an hour. But I like being thorough as well. So, and I like being fair. I think we should look at both sides of the story. I never want you guys to come here and feel like you're getting a biased perspective. I always want you to feel like you're coming here and you're getting something that you thought, or it seems anyway, pretty well thought out. Like, someone spent some time with this and they acknowledged like my concerns on both sides. And I'm going to let you guys make decisions for yourselves. Like, you're smart. You'll figure this stuff out. You'll know in your heart what's best for you and your family and your loved ones and your situation. You don't need me or anyone else to tell you what you should be doing, but I will always challenge you and ask you questions that get you asking better questions so that you can get to the bottom of what it is you really need in your life to get what you want. And that's all I've got for this one. I appreciate you guys hanging out so much. Stay warm out there. Stay safe out there. Until next time, I'm Matt, and I'll see you.